Good evening, and welcome to Soluble, America's Political Central. Today's date is January the 10th in the new year of our Lord 2024. And lo and behold, the Iowa caucuses are upon us. They're less than 1 week away when we will begin to have the Republican primary debates to see, who will be the nominee. It's not quite a foregone conclusion that the former president will be the nominee for the Republican Party, but all bets seem to be hedging in that direction. And so, less than 1 week away. And, as always, we want to reach out and embrace that 90 plus percentile of African American voters who, when they turn out, when they show up at the polls, we're pretty much guaranteed a victory in these days and times. Now we're gonna just step off for a minute into some of the political happenings that are going on right now at this current moment, with less than a week to go before the Iowa caucuses. We have debates tonight between Governor DeSantis and former Ambassador Haley. They're going to square off somewhere around 9 o'clock, and from what we can see so far, it's a race for second. It's a be polite, to the former president. Have a kid's glove approach to any criticism towards the former president, and hope that you can siphon off some of his voters if by some chance happening that he was to bow out and or fall off. And so that's what we see going on thus far with the debate tonight at 9 o'clock. First things first, going into some of the political happenings that are going on here less than a week away. We had our Republican colleagues who have a majority in the House, a slim majority, albeit. And here we are in the new year, folks. We seen all of last year, as we pointed out to you here on Soluble, expulsions, oustings, censures, with very little legislation or meaningful legislation or bills that are being brought to the floor for a vote into law with 1 year of a majority. And so here we are, starting a new year, and Republicans are fresh, out of a new year, continuing to grasp at straws, grope in the dark, if you will, searching for something on Hunter Biden. And, with it being a new year and what's at stake, Hunter is coming out, and no longer wanting to be the hunted. He's coming out with the new year. He's coming out in for the sake of transparency. Now, for whatever reason, our Republican colleagues, they want to have closed door hearings, and they're holding a contempt of Congress vote towards Hunter today, and lo and behold, Hunter Biden showed up. Now, you should be able to look at this and say, okay, here you have the president's son, who is under investigation for some of his holdings at a natural gas company somewhere in the vicinity of Ukraine, called Burisma. He's used his father's name. He's used his father himself. This is what the accusations are. He's used his father's name for leverage, for favor. He's even had his father to get into the discussions in the business dealings when it comes to Burisma, curry favor, get people fired when they're speaking out against legislation that supposedly legislation that the Obama Biden administration favored. And so, for the sake of transparency, Hunter is ready to come out. As a matter of fact, he came out. And then you have Republicans on the other side actually up in arms They're actually they're somewhat angry. They're somewhat incensed that the president's son will not comply with a behind the scenes closed door investigation. He wants to, for transparency's sake, he wants to have an open hearing for all of the public to see, for the press to witness. And for whatever reason that we don't understand, and we don't think that no logical minds can really understand, the Republicans, have a problem with this. Here we are, fresh into a new year, ladies and gentlemen, and it's the same old with this majority that the American people have given to the Republican Party. They haven't taken it. They haven't gotten it any other way but the American people giving them this majority. And we see, as Democrats, this is going to be a sign of things to come. This is to be continued if we don't show up and rock the vote in November 2024. If we don't show up and rock the vote, create that blue wave, then this is to be continued. We've never seen anything like it, ladies and gentlemen. But we know that, righteousness will be on the side of Hunter Biden because he's no longer hunting. And that's been the Republicans, talking point. That's been the narrative. Where's Hunter? Where is he at? What does he have to hide? And lo and behold, fresh starting off a new year, an election year, by the way. What better way to show that I have nothing to hide? I'm willing to put, everything out in the open than to testify before the American people with the press in the room. This doesn't indicate that someone who has something to hide, who is trying to lie, whose father is deeply involved in his business dealings, and they're soon to be in trouble with the law. This indicates none of that. With this young man, Hunter Biden, son of President Joseph R. Biden, willing to come forth and testify here. So keep that in mind as we're starting off fresh in a new year. You have a Democrat, Hunter Biden, for the sake of transparency, for the sake of open government and honesty with the people. This goes a long ways in defense of the republic. This goes a long ways in upholding the system of checks and balances that we have. This goes a long ways in upholding the law enforcement institutions, the tools, the different branches, and the powers that they have. This goes a long ways in upholding this. Ladies and gentlemen, for the sake of transparency, the president's son has come out. And, regrettably, this is where we're at. Fresh into a new year. Republicans, we see what they've done since the midterms of 2022. We see what they did in all of 2023. So, it further brings my point home that we can't sit on the sidelines while a Republican Party attempts a strong hijacking of our democracy. We're willing to give them the benefit of the doubt. Now keep in mind, we're not talking about, climate change. There's been, tragic weather conditions that have happened over the past few days. Flooding, tornadoes. None of that's up for discussion. The Middle East is on fire. Israel and Hamas, are at war. There's human suffering going on. Russia is trying to destabilize or overthrow Ukraine. We have domestic issues here where, it looks like COVID may be trying to rear its ugly head again in some variant. We have the spending bill. We have energy policy. But out of all of these things, that Republicans could be discussing with their majority, with the majority that they've earned from the American people in the 2022 midterms. Here we are in the final year. And Democrats, we have the power to make this the final year of this majority. We have the power to make this the final year of this majority. You see what we're getting. You see what we're getting. We're talking about Hunter Biden, who's no longer hunting, who's no longer hunted. He's there. He's there on the front row saying, here I am. And Republicans are up in arms. What kind of governing branch, governing party, if you will, have you ever seen become upset or up in arms, so to speak, because there's someone who wants to testify with total transparency, with total openness? We've never seen anything like this before. And we have power to, change course from these uncharted waters that we find our Republican colleagues taking us into. And the only way to change that course is to go out and vote. This 90-something plus percentile, this January 6th insurrection of 2021, this was an attack on your vote. This was an attack on your vote. And you have seats at the table here. We have two parties. Well, three, if you will. Even though the independents never put forth a viable candidate, or they haven't up to this point. You have Joe Manchin and some of these other offshoots, talking about no labels. Robert Kennedy possibly talking about no labels. But right now we have three parties: Democrats, independents, and Republicans. So, you're not looking at this. And I'm talking to this 90-something plus percentile that votes Democrat and of African-American descent. You have three parties here. And you see what's going on. So, the choice, it should, even though it should be easy to make, if it's not, it can't take that long. The Republicans have no evidence of wrongdoing that reaches the level of impeachment. So what are we toying around here with? This is not taking on seriously the business of the people and the problems that are plaguing America. And, the world is watching, because America is a country that leads. America is a country that leads. And people around the world are watching. Where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? After the debates tonight, then, the Iowa caucuses are there. They're there. Now, we're dealing with a party right now where we don't know which way is up. We don't know which way is up. And so we can't get caught up, in all the hoopla, in all the spin, in all of the false claims. We can't get caught up. We have to stay focused. We have a democracy to save here. We have a democracy to save. The former president is right now out on the campaign trail. And he's talking about things like Obamacare, with no plan, with no way of knowing if he's going to have a majority in the House and or the Senate to bring something into law. We've been down this road before. But this is where the former president is at. He's up on the podium on the campaign trail talking about the J6 hostages. Talking about the J6 hostages and the claim that there was Antifa there and also the FBI. The president is wholly unfit for this office. But yet, because he's threatened to close the border, the southern border, build a wall, ban Muslims, and things of this, ethnic, bigoted, ethnic cleansing type nature of thinking, he has an undying support among some Republicans who see a dire future ahead for America if, we don't close off the southern border, if we don't come up with common sense immigration. They see, doom and gloom. And so, therefore, this former president can do no wrong. And this is why he's on the campaign trail, restoking these same old, talking points, bringing them up again and again, because there's nothing new. And he knows that, this is the one thing that his voters cling to. This is what has made him the Messiah in some Republican circles. And he knows how to play it well. Antifa, the FBI was at the J6, rally. Once again, what makes the former president's, statement so dangerous? Because they're not backed up with any evidentiary fact. They're not backed up with any evidentiary facts. None whatsoever. But this is what the president is spewing. The former president is spewing. And, it's evident as to why he hasn't shown up at any of the debates thus far. Because he has nothing new. He has nothing new. And to show, or to point out, if you will, here at Soluble, how shallow the former president is and how wholly unfit he is for office, look at these talking points. Look at him, and you see, okay, if he shows up at the debates, and this is all there is, he goes nowhere. It falls flat because the American voters, and, most voters in Republican circles know that we've been down this road before. And so it becomes a question of, what have you done for me lately? And the former president has nothing but revisionist history. Here he is with the name calling again. Here he is with, these birther claims. Now that former Ambassador Haley seems to be gaining traction with her campaign, here he is with the birther claims. The same old, same old. And so, do we get alarmed? Do we become afraid? Or do we, as the American populace, stand up, ready to defend democracy by going to the ballot box this come November? Because as evidenced by the president's own actions and or words, there's nothing new to see here. The former president, he talks about the J6 hostages in glowing terms and how they were treated so badly. But not a word mentioned about the Capitol Hill police officers. What about Officer Sicknick, who shortly thereafter perished at a hospital due to whatever he suffered on that fateful day? Nothing about the Capitol Hill police officers. One of the Capitol Hill police officers was so taken aback by the situation and so overwhelmed, he took his own life. We don't recall his name right here at this very moment here at Soluble, but, it wouldn't be hard to Google it. It wouldn't be hard to do research to find out, who this officer is. But most importantly, this is where the former president is at. And all these actions, all these statements from a former president, based on everything that comes out of his mouth, he loves this country. He loves this country. But not one word of sentiment for the Capitol Hill police officers on that fateful day. It's all about the J6 hostages. Only because the former president knows that that's where he gins up his vote. He has to keep the lies going without evidence of a stolen election, with no evidence. with people who were formerly in his inner circle now copping plea deals. But the former president clings to the lie. And so here we are. Here we are. And, for the sake of democracy, are we as Democrats and common sense independents, are we prepared to say that the former president's actions are based on the amount of love, the depth of compassion or love that he has for the country? And how can we say that? If we can say that, if it's a depth of love that he has for the country, then why does it at every turn the former president seems to want to undermine the country and the institutions that have been serving the country for so long? The FBI is no good. The Department of Justice is no good. And, as common sense Americans, we have to know that this is all because they're simply doing their job. If they're investigating Joe Biden or crooked Hillary Clinton, then they're doing a great job. Let's give them pay raises. Let's do whatever we can to strengthen them with financial resources, hiring more boots on the ground, whatever they need. But only if they're investigating a Republican. And keep in mind that the director of the FBI is a Republican voter, is a Republican American. But if they investigate one of their own, then they're corrupt. They have to go. Ladies and gentlemen, we've never been here before. Now, we've turned back the tide. We turned the tide with the election of 2020. And, the election of Joseph R. Biden as president. We turned back the tide. But if we're not careful, the tide could turn again. The tide can very well turn again. And so here we are with a president more threatening than ever. He's running a campaign where, he lets us know that he's coming into office and it's all about payback. It's all about payback. Mr. President, Mr. Former President, the world is on fire. China is threatening to invade Taiwan. We see what Russia is doing in the Ukraine. Not to mention the problems that we do have here at home with our southern border. Mass deportations. We've seen it before. The former president pledged to build a wall with Mexico financing the whole thing. And at the end of 4 years, what did we have? Yes, the president cut down on legal immigration. He cut down on green cards, visas, and things like this. He cut down on legal immigration. Legal. Keep in mind, illegal immigration, nothing changed. Nothing changed. Holes were blown in the wall. Trenches were dug up underneath the wall. And so nothing changed. And nothing will change unless we vote common sense Democrats in. And as Democratic voters, we understand that. We understand that we can't continue as a country with an open southern border, with a flow of immigrants with no end in sight. We know that we cannot sustain our integrity as a country with the open southern border. But how do we really get it done? With false accusations? By making promises that you can't keep? No. Now, Republicans have a majority in the House. Right now, they're ready to target Secretary Mayorkas. They're ready to target him with impeachment. And there's no there. And that's not, besides the point, that's not the answer. But they're ready to, once again, waste our taxpayers' dollars. Reaching for something with Secretary Mayorkas. And there's nothing there. This is not the answer. Now, as Democrats, we should expect, our Republican colleagues, with the majority that they have in the House, to bring forth common sense immigration proposals that we can seriously look at, find a middle ground as Democrats and Republicans and vote it into law and then begin to enforce it. It really is that simple. But they're going after Secretary Mayorkas. Now, nothing is mentioned that the former president made the promise that he would stem the tide of illegal immigration, because Mexicans were rapists, they're killers, they're bringing guns, and nothing changed with illegal immigration. Now, we should not be biased when it comes to our democracy. We shouldn't, take actions that work, that are used primarily to target the other party, only for the sake of winning an election. And that's where we're at, ladies and gentlemen. So, back to that 90-something plus percentile of African American voters who are primarily in the Democratic corner. Now, as I said, you have these three parties here. This choice cannot be prolonged. This choice cannot be studied too long. And not just, well, mainly because of the fact that you have no traction in the Republican Party. You have no traction there. If they can't win you over without budging, from their biased stance, from their pollution-happy stance, and money over everything stance, if they can't persuade you there, then they're going to try and stop you from voting. You have three choices here. One party is giving you major seats at the table. One party is not. Former Ambassador Haley was asked, here a couple of weeks ago, what was the cause of the Civil War? Now, we all, who are not afraid of the truth, know the answer to that question. But here you have former Ambassador Haley, who was part of a party, by their own, claims, and by their own statements, is not a racist party. But she has to dance around the issue of something, that an answer that is so clear. Sixth graders in high school know the answer to this question. But here you have former Ambassador Haley, college educated, has held government position, whether at the state or federal level, and she's dancing around this question. She's struggling with the right answer to the question. So to that 90-something plus percentile of African-American voters, where do you go? Where do you go? Is this the party that is going to give you seats at the table? Listen to your voices. The state of Iowa, has a minority forum that it puts forth, for Republican candidates to attend to and listen to the issues. And this Iowa forum, minority forum, that was held here in the last 7 days, you had zero candidates. Zero Republican candidates showed up to the Iowa Minority Forum to address the issues that Black and brown people of color face in this country, the issues that, that are serious to them, that they hold dear. Not one. So where do you go? It's simple. One party is giving you seats at the table where you have a voice, not just a seat to fill. And this is the great thing about democracy. One side is giving you seats at the table with a voice. One side is not. One side is saying that you're not important, that the issues that affect you every day are not important. And the choice would be simple. But whether the choice is simple or not, to this 90-something plus percentile who has the power, to sway this election? Who has the power to sway this election, along with the rest of our Democratic voters, and common sense independents? We have the power to save democracy here. And as sure as I'm sitting here, democracy is at stake. President Biden has come out on the trail, Dark Brandon. He's out the gate, Dark Brandon. And we should encourage him to stay there. If the truth hurts, let the Republican Party and the former president be in pain. Let him be in pain. Because we should know and we should understand and realize, leading up to this very important election, the former president cannot even get his own house in order. But he wants to run the people's house. His house being the Trump Organization. He's in court now for cooking the books, for changing paperwork based on the advantages and or disadvantages he may have with tax write-offs, with banks loaning him money. And so as Democrats, we have to realize and stay focused on it. Never mind the slick talk. This noise coming out that the president is too old for office. This is just, these are just things to distract you. These are just things that are meant to distract. Let's look at what is actually happening. And most importantly, here, as I just said, the former president cannot get his own house in order. But he wants to run the people's house. And if we don't show up to vote, we could find ourselves in a never-ending spiral from a functioning democracy to, full speed ahead towards some sort of banana republic with a would-be dictator who's tired, who's fresh out of ideals, whose ideals are so anti-American right now. So anti-America right now. We're going to sit back and watch the debates here coming up at 9 o'clock between Governor DeSantis and former Ambassador Haley. And as Democrats, we must listen very carefully to what's being said versus what's actually being done. But we know that, we are a country of immigrants. We are a country of immigrants. The nation is often referred to as a melting pot, of different races who have, unlike any other country in the world, been able to come together. We've struggled. We've fought. We've went to war. We've disagreed. But in spite of it all, we've been able to come together as a melting pot and function as the envy of the world. A government that is the envy of the world. A country where everyone wants to be. And, that is the power of democracy. The freedom of the press. The freedom of expression. The freedom to, assemble for a petition of grievances, to peaceably assemble against the government. Our government is the envy of the world. And here we have the former president who is willing to attack the republic simply to get his own way. Simply to get his own way, to make investigations go away, to hopefully keep him out of prison. This is the sole purpose. And so, the political battle lines are drawn. Are we going to continue as a nation of immigrants that thrives and functions and moves the government forward in spite of our differences? Are we going to go to one size fits all, where a lot of freedoms and liberties are under attack. A lot of the institutions that have served the country since its beginning are under attack. You see the former Speaker McCarthy, now that he's been ousted, he said he was going to continue to serve. Now he's there, he's not going to run again. But you see him go back to his home state of California. And now, and only now, and this is real important to that 90-something plus percentile and all Democratic voters, you have an ousted former speaker back in his home state talking about, how when he looks over at the Democratic Party, it looks like America, being that the party is multiracial. The party doesn't care about race. It cares about whoever is best for the job, as long as that person was born in America. That's all the party cares about. Who is best for the job? It doesn't care about racial makeup, religious practices. And you have former Speaker McCarthy, now that he's ousted, he's saying it. Where was the spine of a man when he had the gavel, when he was Speaker of the House? Because he had to look over, toward the Democratic side of the House and realize it then. That this Democratic Party looks so much like the American populace. And my party looks like, the good old boys country club. He knew it then. And so as voters, we don't need to let, or wait for Republicans to keep letting the cat out of the bag little by little, talking about deficits, exposing the biasness that exists within the party. When you know that a storm is coming, you prepare for it. If it's a flood, you begin to prepare with sandbags. If it's ice, you may begin to prepare with salt. But you're making preparations one way or another. And there's a storm that's coming that doesn't affect landmass. It doesn't affect, building structures. This storm that is coming, that is fast approaching, is threatening, our very livelihood, the democracy that we function in. That is the threat of the storm that is approaching. Now, forecasters have it pushed out to around November. And so we have a long time to get prepared for this storm. For this storm that would, blow into Washington, D.C., flood into Washington, D.C., and attack democracy as we know it, thereby weakening the republic and our standing in the world. That's very important. As a country, we have a standing in the world because other nations and other people around the world see that, at the end of the day, America may have differences, but they always try to find a way to work them out, to work through them. And here's something that's most important to my fellow Democrats. No one is above the law. No one is above the law. And that's, most important and one of the most dangerous things that we have trying to attack the way that we live. This one somebody in the former president wanting to be above the law. And what's even more, offensive, or should be more offensive, is that you have, Republicans in the House, Senate, and in politics, period, who are aiding and abetting this. When they have to realize that, okay, if there's one person who is above the law, then we're all above the law. Then what purpose is the law? This is where the former president is trying to take the country. And this is the storm that is approaching. Now, we, in 2020, we conquered the storm. We moved past the storm. And we prepared in every way And in 2020, when the storm came, we remained safe as a democracy. Although we were shaken with the January 6th attempted coup, we survived. You know, the wheels of democracy wobbled, but they didn't fall off. And now, you know, lo and behold, much to our chagrin, the threat is here again. It has returned. And so, you know, we have plenty of time to prepare. We have plenty of time to prepare and separate fact from fiction. I mean, you know, we've given MAGA the benefit of the doubt. And, you know, we look forward, we've expected, and rightfully so, we should have, for the former president to come to the debate stage. You know, as the front runner, as the current front runner, come to the debate stage and, you know, talk to us about what you're going to do for all of America. The former president is silent. So that should tell us everything that we need to know going into the elections of 2024. What's new? What's new? We have the same old, and a president who is so egotistical and think that he knows everything that he doesn't need an administration. Everything that, you know, that has been said about American government from Republican leadership, irresponsible things, dangerous things, we're going to debunk those myths. We're going to debunk them. We're going to, you know, put things into proper perspective. Because if you hear these things enough, then you may start to believe them. A two-tier system. You hear Democrats right now vehemently calling for Senator Menendez to step down. Amongst this corruption probe. The evidence is coming out against Senator Menendez doesn't look good at all. But unlike our colleagues on the right, regardless of whether it's, you know, on one side we're dealing with President of the United States, and on one side we're dealing with a U.S. Senator from New Jersey. Regardless, you can't say that it's a two-tier system when you have Democrats calling for a fellow Democrat, regardless of what a special election might hold, what threat that they may lose a seat from a special election. If the senator was to resign or step aside, Democrats are not worried. They're not threatened. They're calling on him to step down. So where's the two-tier system here? Where is the two-tier system? You know, there's no other corruption that I know of amongst, you know, Democratic politicians. But, you know, if it is, we have to be the bigger party here. We can't get into this tit for tat with Republicans, because that's what they would love to have us at, to go and wallow in the mire with their false accusations, with these investigations to nowhere. For the sake of transparency, once again, Hunter has come forward, and they're upset about it. As Democrats, you know, if we can't see through these type of shenanigans and tactics to see how dangerous that, you know, our Republican colleagues have become, and what's it all? Is it for the sake of saving democracy? When is it that we, as a party of individuals or as citizens, accepted, you know, a way of doing politics where we lie, where we're willing to cheat, steal, for love of country? Is this for love of country? And you can't have it both ways. You can't say that these actions are for love of country, while at the same time attacking the FBI, attacking the Department of Justice, the institutions that have, you know, carried this nation forward from an executive perspective since its beginning. Since its beginning. You support the police, just not the Capitol Police. And these are federal officials. So, you know, there's a lot at stake here. But there's no time to fear. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. We see what's happening with the Republican majority right now. As I said, for the sake of transparency, they're against it. You know, the front runner for the Republican nomination is under indictment. He's spending more time in courtrooms than he is on the campaign trail. And so, you know, we have to look at this, you know, and it begs the question, are the actions of our Republican colleagues and the Republican Party, you know, are they taking these actions because of love of country? Where's the patriotism in all of this when they're attacking institutions? When they're supporting a former president who is doing unprecedented presidential things in the Oval Office, totally unbecoming of a president, a totally flawed individual. You have the never Trumpers, you know. You have former Governor Christie, you have former Congresswoman Liz Cheney, and to my Democratic colleagues, you know, it begs the question once again: can they have it so wrong? Can these people have it so wrong? The never Trumpers. This could very well be the last, you know, civil election that we have coming up here in 2024, unless we turn out in mass numbers and rock the boat once again. The former president has tried to shove an election lie through the courts, but it didn't work because he didn't have evidence. There was no evidence to back it up. So the system works. The system works. No evidence then, no evidence now, but yet, you know, the former president still goes on and on and on and on. And so, once again, it begs the question, are the actions that are being taken by the Republican Party for love of country? How is the country, you know, going, you know, in such a downward spiral that our Republican colleagues on the right feel that these actions are necessary, that the measures and all the steps that they're taking are necessary? Inflation is being tamed. Inflation is being tamed. You know, the president is holding the line with foreign policy. Gas prices are down. Grocery prices in some areas are going down. Keep in mind, at the same time, you know, we're dealing with global warming. You know, crop production is not what it used to be. Salt water has somewhat infiltrated, you know, the Gulf down by the state of Louisiana. But yet and still, the president, Joseph R. Biden, has his sleeves rolled up and he's navigating all of these serious crises, all of these serious challenges that we're facing on a daily basis as a country. And what are our colleagues doing on the right? Reaching. They're grasping at straws. You know, investigations to nowhere when we have so many important issues that are facing us today as a country. And so, as the world turns towards the Iowa caucuses, which will be held, you know, this coming Monday, we will sit back and watch. But there's nothing new to see here. As we watch, my fellow Democrats, as we watch on a daily basis what is happening, it should make us more determined, you know, more energized to get out and rock the boat in November. Now, you know, we must keep in mind of the tactics. Some polling places are closing. They're shortening up the time of day that you can vote. They're shortening up the hours that you can vote. They're taking away some of the early voting days. They're doing any and everything that they can to help the former president win an election by stymieing or slowing down the Democratic vote, thereby attacking democracy. What do they have to hide? What are they afraid of? Now, as we've stated here at Soluble, the argument from our colleagues on the right is just that America is a right of center country. But yet they're doing everything that they can to stop the vote, to stop people from voting, to make it harder for people to vote. Talk about having your cake and eating it too. But once again, look at the false claim here. Look at the falseness in it all. You tell me out of one side of your mouth that the country is right of center, but then you turn around to the other side and you make it harder for people to vote. As Democrats, there's no way that we can try to wrap our heads around something as ludicrous as that, as absurd as that. We can never claim that the country is left of center and then, make it harder for people to vote. There's no legitimacy to the claim then. And so these are the things that we're facing. And, we put the Republicans in the minority once. We can do it again. And we have to, because you know it and I know it here at Soluble. The very democracy that has served us well for so many years. We're 247 years in, a very fragile democracy. If democracy survives to the date of July the 4th of this year, 2024, we're 248 years in as a democracy, as a country. We haven't even reached a quarter point of a millennium. And things are unraveling. And the only thing that is going to make it whole, is going to make democracy whole and put it back on a solid footing, is the American people showing up to vote. Especially Democrats, that 90-something plus percentile is where Soluble makes its main appeal. If you want to solve it, if you want to straighten it out, we don't agree with American policy, towards the Middle East. When it comes to the Israelis versus the Palestinians, we have seats at the table. We see right now the Biden administration, Secretary Blinken is in the region. Relocating Palestinians out of Gaza is off the table. It's a non-starter. And so we see that, the party and the politicians that we put in power are listening to our voices. We have to go towards a two-state solution here. And we're going to, break this down issue by issue, leading up to the vote in November. And this is a case where we feel like, if there's anything that the Republicans can do, we as Democrats can do better. And that's what is going to make, the democracy strong. It's going to take it more towards that shiny city on the hill. When we have, all seats filled at the table, representing the melting pot nation of immigrants that we are. You won't find it, or support for that kind of a democracy on the right. You won't find that. And so, it's voter beware. And our goal here at Soluble, in trying to get us back to a better political climate where we're working across the aisles, ending partisanship, ending bickering and gridlock, is to, point out the fact from the fiction, and give it to you as it is, as we see it, as best we can. No spin. You're not going to see us here at Soluble looking into the camera, 1 minute and then looking down on a piece of paper the next minute. It's not scripted. It's not rehearsed. And, as I said, we're trying to separate fact from fiction. That's our goal, because, we can build on the facts. We can govern for the sake of the people and what's best for the American people on the facts and the facts only. And that's a talking point for this podcast session for this day's date, January the 10th. We thank you for joining us here at Soluble. We look forward to entertaining the debates as it relates to seeing, what these candidates have that works best for America, which is the country that we live in, that we all have to live in together. And so we'll observe the debates. The Iowa caucuses are coming up. We see what the Republicans right now are doing with the majority that they have. With the slim majority that they have, we see what they're doing. Here's a new year, and they're totally against transparency. They haven't brought any meaningful legislation to the floor that would, solve some of the crises, situations, and problems that we face as a country right now today. And so stay tuned. We will continue to point it out on both sides of the aisle. We've highlighted Senator Menendez and the corruption, scandalous things that he's been doing right now that has him under investigations. Currying favor with foreign, political groups or what have you. And we're calling it like it is on both sides of the aisle. Because if we're going to solve this thing, if we're going to solve, the current state of political affairs that we find ourselves in today, then the truth cannot be controversial. So until the next time, this is Soluble. We thank you for joining us. We're signing out. And until the next time, let's pay attention to, what our politicians are doing on both sides of the aisle. And until we meet again, this is Soluble signing off. Thank you for joining us. Good night and God bless. Thank you.